You're not going to believe what happened when a young woman got into the wrong car, thinking it was her Uber, and found herself face to face with a millionaire whose life was nothing like she imagined. This isn't just a story about mistaken identity or a ride gone wrong. This is the beginning of a chain of events so unexpected, so emotionally gripping, and so full of twists that by the time you reach the end, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about fate, trust, and the people we randomly meet. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you're going to discover how one small decision changed the course of 2 lives forever. And yes, by the end of this video, you will get the answer that brought you here. Why this one ride, this one mistake, became a turning point no one could have predicted. So take a breath, lean in, and don't even think about clicking away. You're about to be pulled into a story that feels like it was written by destiny itself. It was just another rainy evening in downtown Seattle, the kind where everything looks gray, people walk with their heads down, and you can't tell the difference between raindrops and tears. Her name was Emma, 23, broke, overworked, and running on fumes, both emotionally and literally. She'd just gotten off a draining shift at the tiny bookstore where she worked minimum wage, barely enough to keep the lights on in her shoebox apartment. Emma wasn't one to complain, though. She'd learned to survive on little, to make ends meet with late-night ramen and thrift store shoes, all while pretending everything was fine. But that night was different. It had the weight of something coming. Something that neither she nor the man waiting in that car could ever see coming. And as she stepped out of the coffee shop, clutching her tote bag and phone, soaked and tired, she did what any of us would do. Opened her rideshare app, requested an Uber, and walked toward the car parked exactly where it was supposed to be. Here's where it gets crazy. The black Mercedes was sleek, spotless, expensive. Emma didn't think twice. She tugged the handle, slid into the back seat, and said the usual, "For Emma?" But the man behind the wheel didn't respond. At least, not the way she expected. He turned, raised an eyebrow, and looked her dead in the eye. "I think you're in the wrong car." That moment, those 6 words, shattered whatever fragile sense of routine she had. Her stomach dropped. Her heart raced. But he didn't yell, didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled. And not just any smile, the kind that says, "This just got interesting." She stammered an apology, reaching for the door handle, ready to bolt. But then, he said something that stopped her cold. "Where were you headed?" And from there, everything spiraled. You ever have one of those moments where you feel like the universe is playing a trick on you? Like you're the punchline of a cosmic joke, but then suddenly, the joke turns into a miracle? That's what this was. What Emma didn't know, and what you're about to find out, is that this man wasn't just a stranger. He was a millionaire. A tech entrepreneur who could buy a fleet of Ubers if he wanted to, but preferred to drive his own car just to feel normal once in a while. His name was Cole. Sharp-suited, quiet confidence, the kind of guy who keeps his pain behind a wall of charm and billion-dollar business meetings. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't ask her to leave. He asked her to stay. Not for a date. Not for anything weird.
Just to talk. To drive.
To see where this moment would go. And against every instinct she'd grown up with, Emma stayed. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the start of a Netflix movie or one of those viral TikTok stories that feels too good to be true. But that's exactly why you can't click away right now. Because what happened next wasn't a rom-com or a fairy tale. It was messy.
Real.
Emotional. Full of the kind of choices that tear people apart or bind them together forever. And the deeper you go into this story, the more you'll see yourself in Emma, or maybe even in Cole. It's about more than just money, or chance, or romance. It's about trust, trauma, and what happens when 2 completely different worlds collide in the most unexpected way. So stay with me, because in just a few minutes, you'll see how Emma's accidental Uber ride unlocked secrets neither of them were ready to face. And trust me, if you think you've figured out where this is going, you're wrong. There are moments coming that'll break your heart, make you laugh, and maybe even shift something inside you. That's the power of a story that hits close to home. Because who among us hasn't wished, just once, that one wrong move could lead to something right? That a stranger could become something more? That life could surprise us in a way we actually want. As the night went on, their conversation deepened. From awkward small talk to laughter, to silence that said more than words ever could. Emma found herself letting down walls she didn't even know she'd built. And Cole, this man who seemed to have it all, was hanging on to her every word like it was the first honest thing he'd heard in years. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. And as they drove through the city lights, something was about to come to the surface. Something from Cole's past, something that had everything to do with why Emma was in that car in the first place. You're about to uncover it. But not just yet. Because there's one more twist to this story, and I promise, it changes everything. So don't go anywhere. What happens next will make you question if this meeting was really an accident, or something much, much more. Emma sat in the back seat of the Mercedes, every nerve in her body telling her to get out, but something about the man in the driver's seat made her hesitate. It wasn't just his calm, collected demeanor or the quiet power in his voice. It was the strange comfort of being seen, really seen, even if just for a moment. Cole didn't rush her. He didn't laugh or mock her mistake. Instead, he asked her again, "Where were you headed?" His voice was low, steady, a complete contrast to the chaos inside her. Emma mumbled the address of her apartment, half expecting him to scoff or tell her to call another ride. But instead, he just nodded, put the car in drive, and pulled into traffic as if this was completely normal. She kept glancing at the back of his head, trying to understand what kind of person does that, what kind of millionaire drives a stranger home just because she got in the wrong car. What she didn't know was that Cole had his own reasons for driving that night, reasons far from anything glamorous or convenient. He wasn't running from fame or wealth. He was running from something deeper, something no amount of money could shield him from. As the car glided through the rainy streets, past glowing neon signs and closed-up storefronts, Emma found herself talking. First about the weather, then her job, then her dreams she'd buried under student loans and overdue rent. She surprised herself with how much she shared, how easy it felt. And Cole, to her amazement, listened, not with pity or distraction, but with the full attention of someone who actually cared. His eyes didn't wander to his phone, and he didn't fill the silence with empty words. He just drove, occasionally nodding, occasionally asking questions that hit a little too close to home. Emma started to wonder if she was being played, if this was some kind of weird setup. But every instinct told her otherwise. He seemed sincere, like someone who had been waiting for a conversation that didn't come with expectations or pretense. What she didn't see, though, was the subtle shift in Cole's expression each time she mentioned something personal. When she spoke about growing up without a father, his grip on the steering wheel tightened. When she mentioned that her mom worked 2 jobs and still barely made it through cancer treatments last year, he cleared his throat and looked straight ahead. There was something unspoken in his silence, a connection forming that neither of them could name. But while Emma was opening up without realizing the weight of her words, Cole was sitting with a growing storm inside. He knew something she didn't. Something about her. And that secret, it was the real reason he didn't ask her to leave. Meanwhile, across the city, another figure watched the night unfold from behind the tinted windows of a luxury penthouse. Jasmine Rivera, Cole's head of corporate security and longtime confidant, had been tracking his car for the past hour. It wasn't surveillance, not exactly. It was more like protection. Cole had made enemies over the years, people who didn't like how quickly he'd risen from a scrappy coder to the face of a billion-dollar tech empire. His disappearance from a high-profile gala earlier that evening had set off quiet alarms. Jasmine knew him well, better than most. When he disappeared like this, it meant something was wrong.
Or about to be.
She zoomed in on the street cam feed, catching a grainy image of the woman in the backseat.
Young.
Wet from the rain. A nobody, at least on the surface. But Jasmine had seen enough in her line of work to know when a nobody was about to become very important. And something about Emma's face gave her pause. Not because she looked dangerous, but because she looked familiar. Back in the car, Emma's phone buzzed in her bag, but she ignored it. Her roommate Kelsey had probably noticed she hadn't come straight home. They usually shared their location with each other in case anything ever happened, a habit born out of too many late-night scares in a city that didn't always feel safe. But Emma was lost in the moment now, lulled by the rhythm of the rain against the windows and the warm hush of the car's interior. Cole finally broke the silence by asking her something that felt casual, but wasn't. Do you ever think about how one small decision can change your entire life? She laughed at first, then realized he was serious. She nodded slowly and replied, all the time. What she didn't know was that Cole wasn't just speaking hypothetically. He'd made a decision years ago, one rooted in ambition, desperation, and a need to prove himself, and that decision had created a ripple that was finally, tonight, reaching Emma. As the ride continued, Emma started to ask more about him, where he was headed, what he did. He gave vague answers at first, said he worked in tech, that he liked driving alone to clear his head. He didn't mention the multi-billion-dollar company he'd founded or the stock prices tied to his name. He didn't tell her about the lawsuit currently brewing against him from a former business partner or the woman he'd lost years ago in a car accident that still haunted his sleep. He didn't tell her why he'd taken a detour through that part of town in the first place or what he hoped to find. But he did say one thing that stuck with her. Sometimes, the people you meet by accident turn out to be the ones you needed all along. Elsewhere, Kelsey was pacing their apartment, phone in hand, staring at Emma's shared location. It hadn't moved in 20 minutes. She recognized the street. It was industrial, half-abandoned, full of construction zones and warehouses. Not exactly the kind of place you hang out in for fun. She tried calling again. No answer. A knot of fear began to form in her stomach. Emma had made mistakes before, trusted people too quickly, said yes to things she should have run from. Kelsey didn't know who this car belonged to or why Emma wasn't answering, but she knew something felt off. She decided to text one of their mutual friends from the neighborhood watch group, a guy named Malik who worked private security and had a few connections in the rideshare world. If anyone could find out if Emma was safe, it was him. And Malik, it turned out, already knew something. He'd seen that car before. And it wasn't just anyone's. It belonged to Cole Kensington. As Malik started digging, pulling up old articles and newer headlines, a web began to form. Cole Kensington wasn't just a tech genius. He was a recluse with a past full of whispers, lawsuits that never made it to trial, investments that vanished without explanation, and a tragic story involving a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to Emma. Malik's instincts kicked in. He wasn't the type to believe in coincidences, and this one was too close, too precise. Something was happening. Something big. And Emma was right in the middle of it. The car finally pulled up outside Emma's building, but she didn't move. Neither did Cole. They sat in silence, the engine still humming, the streetlight casting a soft glow across the dashboard. Emma was about to thank him, to say goodnight, to step out and chalk this all up to a strange but memorable encounter. But before she could speak, Cole turned to her, his expression unreadable, and said, "There's something you should know." His voice was tight, careful. Emma's heart skipped. She stared at him, waiting. And just as he opened his mouth to explain, a black SUV screeched around the corner, headlights blazing, stopping just inches from the Mercedes. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out. And that's when everything changed. Don't go anywhere. The truth that's coming next, you won't see it coming. The moment the black SUV screeched to a halt, everything shifted. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she instinctively reached for the door handle, heart pounding, unsure whether to run or freeze. The man stepping out of the vehicle was dressed in all black, sharp features shadowed under the brim of his cap. His eyes locked on Cole's, and something electric passed between them, an unspoken warning, maybe, or a challenge. Cole's body went rigid, his expression darkening in a way Emma hadn't seen before. The easygoing stranger who'd listened so patiently during the ride was suddenly someone else entirely. "Stay in the car," he said, his voice low but firm, leaving no room for argument. He opened his door slowly, like he'd done this before, like he knew exactly how fast a situation could spin out of control. Emma wanted to ask what was going on, who this man was, Why her simple mistake of getting into the wrong car had turned into something out of a thriller movie, but all she could do was watch as Cole stepped into the night. The two men exchanged words, too quietly for her to hear, but the tension between them crackled through the air like a live wire. She could feel it in her chest, in the way Cole subtly shifted his weight like he was ready for something more than just a conversation. Then the man in black glanced at the car, at her, and she saw it. That look, that recognition. Whoever he was, he knew who she was. Or at least he thought he did. That moment was enough for Emma to feel the room tilt. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. Somehow, she had become part of something bigger, darker, something that had very little to do with a rideshare app and everything to do with Cole's secrets. While the confrontation outside simmered, Jasmine was watching the whole thing unfold from her surveillance rig. The street cam caught everything: Cole stepping out of the car, the approach of the SUV, the man's face, and when she zoomed in and paused the frame, she cursed under her breath. Marco Drell, former associate, ex-intelligence. Now a fixer for hire, the kind of man who didn't show up unless someone needed to disappear without a trace. She'd warned Cole before. The tech world was brutal at the top, and the people he'd edged out over the years hadn't forgotten. But this? Marco being there, now, on that night, with that girl in the car? That wasn't just a coincidence. That was a message. Jasmine started making calls. Discreet ones. She had to get to Cole before Marco made his move. Before Emma became collateral damage in a war she didn't even know existed. Inside the car, Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, she checked it. A dozen missed calls from Kelsey. One text stood out, glowing on the lock screen. "Where are you? That's not an Uber. It's Cole Kensington. Look him up. Please, just be safe." Emma's fingers trembled as she unlocked her phone and searched the name. The moment his face appeared on the screen, her mouth went dry. The articles were endless. Tech billionaire vanishes from gala. Cole Kensington's mysterious withdrawal from public life. Scandal or grief? Questions resurface around death of fiancé. That last headline stopped her cold. The woman in the photo looked hauntingly familiar. Same dark hair, same eyes. Emma felt like the wind had been knocked out of her. This wasn't a coincidence. There was a reason he hadn't thrown her out of the car. There was a reason he had looked at her the way he did. She wasn't just a random girl to him. But she didn't have time to ask why. Cole was back in the car seconds later, breathing hard, slamming the door shut just as the SUV pulled away. "We have to go," he said, throwing the car into gear and peeling away from the curb. Emma demanded to know what was happening, but he just shook his head. "You're not safe here. I should have told you earlier. I didn't think it would catch up this fast." She pressed him, heart racing, voice shaking. "Catch up? With what? Who was that man?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned off the main road, heading into the industrial outskirts, driving faster now, as if time itself was chasing them. The city lights faded behind them, and Emma began to understand something she couldn't put into words. She was part of a story now, one far bigger than she ever expected. Back at the apartment, Malik had started connecting more dots. He found surveillance footage from a charity event Cole had attended years ago, the one where his fiancée had last been seen alive. She'd vanished from the parking garage that night. The case had been ruled an accident, but the footage showed a different angle. There, in the background, a blurred figure who looked just like Marco. Malik froze the image, then compared it to tonight's footage. Same stance. Same build. He'd been there then, and he was here now. That meant one thing. This wasn't random. Marco wasn't just following Cole.
He was hunting him.
And Emma, by sheer accident or fate, had become the key. As Cole and Emma sped deeper into the night, Emma finally turned to him, voice sharp with fear and frustration. "Who do you think I am?" she demanded. Cole didn't respond right away. When he did, his answer sent a chill down her spine. "I think you're the second chance I never thought I'd get." His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then back to the road. "But I also think you're in danger because of me. And now we're both running out of time." Just ahead, a roadblock appeared. Not police. Not city workers. Black SUVs. Unmarked. Waiting. And that's when Emma realized this wasn't just the wrong car. She'd stepped into a trap decades in the making. And the only way out was through a truth she wasn't ready to hear. Cole's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as the black SUVs loomed ahead, blocking the only visible exit from the dim, industrial alley they'd taken as a detour. For a split second, everything fell silent. The engine hum seemed to fade, the buzzing city beyond the warehouse walls disappeared, and Emma felt the weight of every choice that had led her here. She glanced at Cole, the man who had gone from a mistaken Uber driver to a mystery wrapped in tragedy, power, and danger. And now she realized he was also a man hunted not just for what he had, but for what he knew. The air inside the car turned heavy, thick with decisions neither of them could back out of. Emma's breath caught in her throat as Cole whispered, "I need you to trust me now more than ever." And then, with a roar of the engine and tires screaming against the cracked pavement, he slammed the car into reverse and cut down a side path barely wide enough for the SUV. The enemy vehicles responded immediately, giving chase, headlights slicing through the shadows. They wove through forgotten corridors of the city, places not marked on any map, abandoned factories, graffiti-tagged tunnels, desolate rail yards. Every twist and turn peeled back another layer of the truth. As they drove, Cole finally spoke, really spoke, his voice hollowed by years of silence and regret. He revealed that his fiancée, Olivia, hadn't died in an accident. She'd been silenced because she uncovered a massive data laundering scheme tied to several billion-dollar tech conglomerates, people Cole had once partnered with. She had trusted the wrong people and paid for it. Cole had tried to expose the truth after her death, but they'd buried the evidence, ruined his credibility, and forced him into hiding. Jasmine, his loyal tech confidant, had kept him connected from the shadows, and Malik had been working to recover encrypted files Olivia left behind. But the real twist, the one that made Emma's skin crawl, was that Olivia's files weren't just random code. They were voice diaries, videos, memories, each one hidden under layers of biometric encryption, keyed not to Olivia's DNA but to Emma's. That revelation cracked the entire story open. Emma was Olivia's cousin, biologically close enough to match the encryption, but adopted as a baby and separated from the family after a tragic accident. She never knew the full truth. Never even knew she was connected to Olivia's world. That was why she had looked so familiar to Cole. That was why Jasmine had started tracing genetic lineages weeks ago and flagged Emma's name. That was why Marco had arrived. Not to scare Cole, but to eliminate the one person who could open the digital vault and expose the truth to the world. They weren't just chasing Emma. They were chasing the
key.
As the car slowed and turned into an underground garage beneath what looked like an abandoned print shop, Jasmine and Malik met them at a steel door that opened with a triple biometric scan. Inside, walls were lined with glowing monitors, humming servers, and one black cube at the center, an encrypted terminal that hadn't been touched in over 2 years. Jasmine guided Emma to the scanner. "One try," she said, her eyes locked on the terminal. "If it works, we go public. If it doesn't, they'll erase all of us." Emma hesitated, then stepped forward. The scanner lit up blue, then green, then white. A low chime echoed across the chamber. The vault opened. What poured out wasn't just proof of criminal corruption. It was enough to topple companies, arrest CEOs, and dismantle the entire network that had covered up Olivia's death. Voice files played, Olivia's own words, warning her future self, apologizing to Emma if she ever found them, and begging whoever listened to never let the truth be buried again. Tears streamed down Emma's face. Cole, too, looked hollowed by the flood of memories. Jasmine immediately began uploading the data to mirrored servers and dark web backups, while Malik streamed the initial files to trusted journalists. Within an hour, the story was out. #OliviaFiles, #TruthExposed, and #ColeKensingtonTruth trended on YouTube and Twitter, with millions watching the story unfold in real time. Whistleblower stories surged in response, and a congressional inquiry was opened within 48 hours. But the final twist came just as the dust seemed to settle. Days later, Emma received a package at her doorstep. No return address, no explanation. Inside was a single flash drive with one video. She inserted it cautiously. The screen flickered to life and displayed Olivia, alive. Or, at least, alive in that moment. "If you're seeing this," Olivia said with a weak smile, "it means you open the vault. It also means you're part of the family, and they'll come for you next." Emma froze, chills racing down her spine. Olivia wasn't just leaving a record. She was warning Emma that this wasn't over. That even after everything, someone had survived. Someone still wanted to erase the truth. And now, Emma was the last piece standing in their way. The screen cut to black, and Emma sat in silence, her hands trembling, her mind spinning. The story the world had seen was only the beginning. The girl who got into the wrong car by mistake had unraveled one of the biggest tech conspiracies in modern history, but in doing so, had become a target herself. She took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the window. In the reflection, she saw not a girl lost in the city, but a woman transformed by truth, by fire, by the impossible. Somewhere behind her, Cole stood in the shadows, watching. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emma turned to him and nodded. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." And just like that, the story came full circle, not with an ending but a beginning. The wrong Uber had become the right destiny. And the woman the world overlooked was now the one who held its future.